So today's been turning into a Jessica Tarlov day, but there's so many astounding clips that I had to get all caught up. In this segment, they're discussing the Ronna McDaniel hiring, which is kind of funny because in a way, hiring Ronna could be seen as NBC's attempt to do what Fox has done with Jessica. The problem obviously is the intellectual deficit between the two of them, and Ronna represents more than just the regular, average, everyday Republican. And we'll get into all of that, but first, let's hear what Jessica has to say.
Well, I can only afford my very high rent because Fox believes in having opposition voices. So I do think that's incredibly important. And obviously, great respect for the First Amendment. And I feel that it is important to have representatives from a party that actually represent the party versus never Trump Republicans who are not telling you anything about what's going on inside the Republican Party at this moment. It is a small faction that does decide elections. So you should hear from someone who says, I voted for Trump in 2016, but I switched to Biden in 2020. But Ronna McDaniel offers incredible access, which is definitely a huge part of this. And it's an election year, as Jesse said. But she's not a regular Republican. She's not a regular opposition voice.
Exactly. She's not someone who gives the perspective of Republicans from a logical or real world based perspective, like Mitt Romney, right? They must have hired the wrong Romney. But instead, she largely represents the ethos that MSNBC and NBC are against: the election denialism, the lies about immigrants, anything to bolster Trump, doesn't matter if it's true or not. And that becomes my issue with the hiring. What do you get out of Ronna McDaniel? You're not just giving perspective to the other side, you're giving credence to the lies that she and MAGA continues to push. Look at how her Meet the Press interview went. She's not willing, she's not ready, she's not trying to walk back any of the claims she's made. She's just trying to justify them in the name of Trump. She was hardly willing to even condemn January 6th, only doing so after downplaying and minimizing it. And that should be the easiest bullet to bite.
She is someone who flies in the face of what has become the core ethos over at NBC and MSNBC, from refusing to say that Joe Biden freely and fairly won that election to getting on the phone with Donald Trump and calling up GOP officials in Michigan and pressuring them not to certify the election results. And so we all know this. If you tune in to MSNBC, you are going to hear about January 6th a lot. You are going to hear about how important. No, not okay. I'm not done. It is core to their ethos there. It is core to their viewership that is one of the most important sins that has been committed against the country. And then to go out and hire someone who has participated in it and made no apologies. If you want to have her on and say every interview is going to start with, why did you call up those officials? And pressure them not to certify the results when we know how people voted in Michigan.
Yeah, and if they're going to have her on to consistently hammer away at why she lied or did the things she did, that's fair game. But they hired her as a contributor to give her own opinions, to hold her own interviews. And clearly, from her first Meet the Press, she's not willing to concede any of those points. So I just don't see much real benefit from her as a hire. I'm glad that the other hosts spoke out, and now it seems like she's not going to be contributing for NBC.
If you're just going to greet her like a normal opposition voice, like me, just run-of-the-mill establishment Democrat, I don't think that that's correct, and it probably is a bad business decision for them.
So then you must agree that someone like Letitia James, who says that Trump was an illegitimate president, she should be sanctioned some way for saying the president was illegitimate.
If she was offered a $300,000 or whatever.
She's the Attorney General of the state of New
Why
York
are you
with
playing
the power
what about
to indict. Well, you're the one who's bringing up January 6th. All right, go ahead,
Ronna
Dana.
McDaniel has a part in what happened with January 6th. This is being investigated.
The difference is context and intent. Letitia James, in a speech talking about how Trump brought us to the lowest point in our history since the Civil War by destroying families and removing rights, said he was illegitimate in a context to mean unqualified or lacking credibility. If you want to say the use of the word illegitimate is irresponsible or something, sure, but she wasn't saying that he didn't win the election. And anyone with the context for the quote could tell you that. Ronna McDaniel, on the other hand, did say exactly that, pressured officials to overturn overturn ballots was in the shtick of all of that mess while also doing media tour after media tour. Trump won, blah, blah, blah. And most of the Letitia James stuff, if I'm being honest, is completely taken out of context. So I do want to touch on that quickly because you hear from right-wingers a lot trying to take down anyone, really, who's targeting Trump. But with Letitia James, it seems that the saying is, oh, she ran on this. This is what got her elected. She's had a vendetta. And it's not true at all if you just look at the context of the clips that Trump himself is sharing to make these points. For instance, Trump shared a clip of her saying she's going to sue him. And that's proof, right? That, oh, she's been after him for a while. Oh, he'll know my name personally. That's something she said. Sounds bad, right? But this was in response to directly being asked if she would sue Donald Trump. Funny how he cut that question out. It's almost like she probably wouldn't have said it if she wasn't asked. Another one is her saying, we have to follow Donald Trump and his money. We have to do that. Again, in response to a direct Donald Trump question. Again, cut out of the clip that Donald Trump likes to share. Who turns around and clips these in hopes that they just want to make it seem like she's been out to get him since the start, when in reality, this was a hot topic in their election. All the candidates were consistently asked, Donald Trump, what are you going to do with him? How are you going to go after him? Blah, blah, blah. And it was the pillar for a lot of voters. But this is why context is important and why MAGA never searches it out. It often shatters their worldview. Context is the arch nemesis of misinformation.